there were many people around me who told me that's not a good idea. Take a corporate job. You have children. It's not the best idea. You would lose the family that you've built over years. I cannot say all of those came from bad intention. Most of the times, that's really what they think and what they believe and what they've been told. So I didn't take like those advice as someone that, oh, they don't want the good thing happen to me. No, it's just what they believe. But how that influence my life, it's my decision.
Welcome to Multiple Hats, a show about STEM professionals who have gone off script and carved their own path beyond the tracks that were set for them. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, medicine, how they found their why and what it takes to make it happen. I'm Angelique, your host, and on today's episode, I'm talking to Dr. Mariam Parvez, the co-founder and CEO of SDIP Innovation, a medtech company which technology is a bioresorbable implant which promises to prevent multiple surgery for patients, cut down on theater time for surgeons, and all that for a fraction of the cost of existing products. The implant can be shaped to the patient's body, pre-shaped or shaped on the go, and there is no need to remove it later, and it reduces the risk of inflammation. Of course, I'm a big fan of medtech and biotech, and I'm always baffled not just by the science, but by the motivation and the minds of the scientists who not only invent, but reinvent again and again and execute and get the product to the patient where it can make a difference. And that's Dr. Mariam Parvez, a brilliant biomedical engineer with a PhD in nanomedicine and an acclaimed health tech leader. She tells us about the technology, the process, and the challenges in the sector, and especially here in Australia. And she also tells how her and her team got to reinvent the tech, get into prestigious incubators in the US, build a world-class team, and got backed up by some of the best serial entrepreneurs and investors. All right, let's hear the pitch from Dr. Mariam Parvez, co-founder and CEO of SDIP Innovations.
So we have this technology that is next generation bioresorbable bone implants. So basically we have a platform technology that restores the bone and replaces the bone at the same time. So imagine if someone has a big gap in the bone because of a trauma, or if the surgeon has created the gap actually purposely for doing some operations such as different type of osteotomies. There they have to use something extra to fill the gap. And Jasby is that promise, so it holds the bone in place and it converts to bone. We have pre-shaped fillers, so they come in shape of cubes, wedge, and rods. And we also are developing delivery kit, which is basically a cartridge and a delivery device. The surgeon put the cartridge inside the delivery device, and then what comes out is soft for 1 to 2 minutes, so surgeon can shape it according to patient's need. And then after that is as solid as bone. So that's the technology, and future applications also like bioresorbable screws, anchors, other things that can be made using this platform technology.
Wow, so you actually don't need a removal surgery after all. Once the device, the technology is in your body, it stays there and it becomes bone.
Exactly.
Wow. And it's like saving a lot of time and a lot of pain for the patient. So that's fantastic to hear.
Exactly. And it's important because there are other products in the market, but it's important that you have something that doesn't create inflammation, removes the unnecessary need for removal surgeries, repeat surgeries. So Jasby, so far in the studies, we've shown that it doesn't create any bad body response. So it's important to have something that holds the bone in place, converts to bone, and also doesn't create side reactions basically in the body.
So the gold standard at the moment is creating a lot of inflammation. And how did you go to circumvent this challenge?
So most of the surgeons actually use bone from another part of the patient's body. That means opening two sides more time in the surgery theater and more time from surgeon. Also, higher chance of infection and more painful patients. But also, they get the extra bone, the bone grafts from allografts, which means from cadaver models as well. Um, that requires lots of cutting, shaping, again, extra time in the surgery theater. And there are also chances of disease transfer between two people. And then there are synthetic bone grafts. And as you mentioned, the gold standards are either brittle because they are just purely made of something called ceramic, or they cause inflammation when they have bioresorbable polylactic acid in their structure.
So the composition of JASB, it's specifically created to not trigger inflammation then?
Yeah, it has mainly two parts. One part mainly responsible for bone conversion. That's basically induce bone to regenerate more and more bony tissue, native bony tissue. And we also have a polymer that is more responsible for structural integrity, giving it shape so it's not brittle. Basically, surgeon can cut it, handle it easily. And then when it comes to the delivery device, using JASB delivery device, the promise is that surgeon can get any shape, which is mostly due to the polymer that we use in the structure. So basically, it has different components responsible for different tasks.
Different property. Perfect.
Yes.
Fantastic. And so I read on the JASB page that it's 30 times less expensive than the current gold standard and 5 times more cost effective than ceramic alternative to manufacture. So why is it so much more cost effective?
So the way that we calculate how much it costs is basically you calculate how much raw material you're using, what manufacturing processes are there, and how much that costs. Obviously, big companies have their own way of saving, but when it comes to just simple comparison, you compare the cost of the raw materials and the manufacturing process. And that's because it's JASB 30 times cheaper than the gold standard because the polymer that we use is actually less expensive and it's new for medical device applications, basically.
Beautiful. So the end price for the hospital to buy and the cost for the society to pay would be less expensive.
The cost to manufacture is different from the cost that the customer will pay, right? But it saves money from health system. And also, more importantly, when it comes to JASB delivery device, it can save surgeons 15 to 20 minutes of time. That's huge in terms of the cost structure for hospitals and surgeons' schedule, how they can schedule their surgeries during the day. That's a big savement.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they would be very grateful to save 20 minutes. Yeah, wow, beautiful. And so what is in the name? Why did you call it SDIP Innovation?
So that stands, STEEP stands for Safe Degradable Implant Platforms. And we named it basically when we were just two of us starting the company. And when we named the technology JASB, we looked at JASB name in two ways. One is Jazzy bioresorbable implants, so JASB, and also JASB in Farsi, Urdu, Arabic means something that resorbs.
Ah, okay. So it actually has the meaning. It's got a good ring to it. So let's go back to your younger self. You have taken the entrepreneurship path quite early in your career. And you started with a Master of Biomedical Engineering in Iran in 2011, and then a PhD in nanomedicine in Australia in 2016. Why did you choose to study biomedical engineering at the first place?
So I studied biomedical engineering for my bachelor as well as my master in a university in Iran. At that time, that was the only university, and that's the top university in Iran that offered this major. And I was inspired by medical devices that were used in my household. My mom was using like hearing aid. I was just inspired by how they can improve the lives. And that's how I chose to study biomedical engineering in the first place. And later, when I wanted to do my PhD, I did my PhD in nanomedicine. The project was purely again biomedical engineering. So that's been my passion from high school, just inspired by seeing people around me, how medical devices can improve their quality of life.
And so you've always been a sciencey kid when you were a teenager?
I think, yeah, I was the nerd one. I was not the cool kid. Uh,
But nerd
yeah,
is the new cool, so we do need more women in bioengineering. So it's good to have you in the field.
that's very interesting because in Iran, most of engineering students are actually women and girls. So the number of women and girls students in engineering fields,
Oh, right.
yes, is more than boys. And I don't know what exactly is the reason, but honestly, when I came to Australia, it was strange for me that girls are not interested in doing engineering fields. It's the end that was completely new. The fact that Iran is a third world country and women are restricted in so many ways, but they're not like studying engineering for girls is such a norm.
That is so interesting because it's not that women are not interested in engineering. They are just structurally discouraged to do that from a young age. We encourage boys to be the science more oriented, the geometry, the mathematics, the physics, and the girls more pushed towards literature. It's simply how society guides us through, and we carry that on. And so, yeah. But then in Australia, also, once you've got women with STEM degrees, they get pushed out of the sector within 5 years, which is also very tragic. So, and there is a lot of initiative to try overcome this, but it's still a reality. So
That's
it's
true.
very interesting that Iran might be very different. And so do women then continue after graduating, or is it the same and they lose the track after?
That's the thing. They lose the track mostly.
Okay.
So yes, I don't have the exact statistics, and that's not my field of expertise, but I can just say from experience and from my family and friends that there is no issue in studying engineering. You get your first job, but if you really want to like get management jobs in engineering, if you really want to pursue careers, get promotions, that's when the problems kick in.
Yeah, so a
Yeah.
little bit the same here. We
Yeah.
know there are many systemic issues on that and the motherhood penalty and so on. But let's not delve into that too much today. I am actually quite curious because after your PhD, very shortly, you co-founded SDIP Innovation in 2018. But your PhD, as you mentioned, was researching implantable cell-based electrodes to visualize new drug effect on human live cell, which I would understand is very useful in drug discovery to screen new molecules.
Yes, that's right.
But so I'm curious then, when and where did you invent the JASB technology?
My background is biomaterials. During my master and bachelor, I have published papers on biomaterials, like in inventing new formulations. So after my PhD, I was a postdoc in UTS in an institute, which is Industrial Institute of Biomedical Devices. I was working on a project in implants for diagnosis of different things. And so that was a time that I interacted directly and so closely between research and startups. And I got a scholarship from New South Wales Health Government to take the course called Medical Device Commercialization Program at the time, and it still is sponsored by New South Wales Health and executed by Cicada Innovations. And they have that program every year. And how that works is that they get around 20 PhD students or PhD graduates or clinicians or academics to come to this 3 months course, learn the startup language, learn more about commercialization, and more importantly, network with people who have done it before and are in the startup world. So that really encouraged me to enter the entrepreneurship world. But the project that I had during my PhD didn't have the intellectual property promises that is required to start a company on it. It already belonged to a company itself. So what happened is that my husband also has been in biomaterial field. We have been together since bachelor, studying biomedical engineering, and he was working on different bioresorbable implants during his PhD and then during his postdoc in Children's Hospital. And I encouraged him to take the course the year after. So he also participated in medical device commercialization program post his PhD. And then together we put a proposal in to start the company. So we registered the company, but we started also applying for different grants and different funds because being husband and wife also made it more important to be financially a bit secure to start this journey because someone needs to pay the bills and mortgage, etc.
Right. So your co-founder is your husband.
Yeah. And my best friend, and we both have, we understand the biomaterial language between us. We have complementary skills, but we also have a common language when it comes to biomaterials. So when we started the company, we did a lot of customer discovery interviews. We talked to so many surgeons. We had the ideas in mind of bioresorbable implants. We basically talked to different type of surgeons, not just orthopedic surgeons, to understand what would be the best application. And we started the company by licensing the patent from University of Sydney on what was patented on my husband's PhD and what he invented. But then later, that's something that I want actually the other entrepreneurs know as well. When you start a company, especially in deep tech, you will keep innovating and inventing and inventing. That's really important to keep the clinicians or the scientists as part of the team. Because I promise in 99% of cases, the technology will change. So that was the case for us. Within the first year after forming the company, we pivoted. We invented a new platform. And that platform, we made it specific initially for bone applications, but we also patented the potential application in other fields.
So so you start from one IP. It changed to the extent that you had to patent again.
Yes, that's right. So based on our idea and our background, we put a proposal in and we applied for New South Wales QB3 and Rosenman Scholarship, which was a 2-year opportunity to be in UCSF Rosenman and QB3 incubators in San Francisco. So yes, when we got that scholarship, we both moved to the US. And that was the time we had access to labs. We both were ready to invent, and we had access to all the facilities. And we tweaked the technology and we improved the technology. We changed the technology. We basically created a new platform.
Once you started that company and had that grant to get to the UC Berkeley QB3 incubator, was that the two of you, or did you have to build a bigger team at that point?
Not initially, but when we were there, we got the chance to actually build a very good, world-class team. We had mentorship from entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, in Bay Area, that gradually guided us towards our current advisors and board members. So our current advisors and board members are serial entrepreneurs. They basically complement what me and my co-founder are expert in. They've done it not once, couple of times before. They have taken technologies all the way from research to basically patient study and merging to big companies. So we have Fred Dinger, we have Gabby, Mark. So people on our advisory board, for example, Gabby has sold 4 medical device companies to big players. Fred has sold 3 medical device companies, and his last company is going through either acquisition or just becoming publicly available to purchase the shares. So when we were in the US, that was the time that we expanded the team to people who were complementing our skills, first on advisory and board level. And then we had our first hires, which was on quality management system. And we went from there. And And then we started having more and more people.
How many people do you have now, 5 years in?
We have 5 members, but it's a startup. It's very dynamic. So there has been times that we had 7. Right now, I'm talking to you, we have 5. There has been times that we were 9. So it's, and we have like contractors that are the same people who work for our advisors. And then through the warm introductions, we have got the chance to work with them as well, in addition to the employees.
And more scientists?
Maybe not at this stage, but we have the plan for other applications. We are interviewing people for scientist positions, yes.
Okay, so the core team is advised in multiple areas, and then you two, you and your husband, really the core scientists.
We have the engineer as well in the team.
Good, beautiful. And so how did you get into the UC Berkeley QB3 Innovator? Because this is world class and you are in Australia and then you're from Iran. So how did you know about it? How did you network that?
So I would give the credit fully to New South Wales Health, the Department of OHMR. So it's a medical research department inside the New South Wales Health. And Anne O'Neill herself, who is now the director, so she was coming in person to medical device commercialization course a couple of times. And they introduced the opportunity and they said they have this open position. We were the second team that had the opportunity to be sponsored by Australian government to be in that world-class incubators in San Francisco. And when we were there, we were really proactive. So we kept networking. We were asking help from people who we knew have done it before. And then we have the same chemistry, like we can work together. So I had no hesitations to network with these people and understand how much they can add. Because when I was looking at myself, just the 2016 when I finished my PhD, and then 2019 when I was in the US in the incubators working on my own company, I was thinking how much I have learned in that 3 years. So I could imagine how much they know that I don't know during their 20, 25, 30 years of career. So I was really proactive in networking and getting people to refine my pitch deck, listen to my pitch decks, people from Fogarty Institute, from Stanford Biodesign. I was just asking them to have a coffee, and then I was asking people in QB3 Incubator, UCSF Rosenman, Christine Vinotto, the head of UCSF Rosenman. I was asking her personally, can you please introduce me to this person or that person? And they were really kind and generous enough to spend time and do that. Just about asking. So you don't get it if you don't ask. I was asking all the time. When I was in Cicada Innovations, taking the medical device commercialization course, and then later, before we go to the US, there is also one missing part that I like to highlight. So before going to US, we were incubated as a company in Cicada Innovations as part of their MedLab accelerating program. So that was like about 6 months of program. So that's again, that was the best time to network, find people, not only in Australia, but also in the US. And we were basically, I was not asking money from anybody that I was meeting first, just asking for their advice. And then if they had money, I would ask like later on.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about those program and the funding. So with Cicada Innovation, you also get access to labs. So is that where you made the research then to pivot all your technology in Cicada's Innovation Lab and then in the QB3 lab?
Exactly. But we had also like agreements in place in terms of IP ownership, which gets really detailed.
Yeah. So it's all confidential, but you can use their facilities. Because it is instrumental, right? If you want to do innovation and you need facilities.
Yes. And we also, like at the STEP Innovations right now, because we have the facility ourselves and we've been there when we wanted to invent and we wanted to improve our technology, we wanted access to the lab and we didn't have it. So now that we have the facility, we have been open to open our facility to founders. We have had some conversations when people needed to use the lab.
So you have your own facility now?
Yeah, we have a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in North Sydney, and it has clean room, which ISO 7, ISO 8 clean rooms, and we also have because as you mentioned, the importance of R&D, we also have I would call it a wet lab, a dirty lab, where innovations happen, and office areas where we have people in the office who are experts in quality management, in design, in developing business models. So while we are heavily focused on our technology, we've been also open to help other startups when they come and they get introduced via networks that we know and we trust.
Oh, that's amazing, because that is hard governance to lend your lab. So I understand that there is a lot of effort in keeping everything the way it should be in compliance and everybody's safe.
Exactly.
So it's fantastic that you've been opening this door. How do you get access to lab if you're not in an incubator? But having companies like yours giving that is an extra option for new innovators. So that's really good to give back.
I think that's a model that we saw a lot in Bay Area. Like you can see like companies renting out the basic lab. Yeah. So it's easy to find. What you mentioned is very important. That's a huge gap. When you have a technology that comes, you, for any reason, you decide to take it out of university until you commercialize it or you get investment on it. It's a long journey. It's a lot of R&D going on early days. And it's something that we sometimes forget is that where that initial early R&D should happen. So yeah, the reason it's not right now uh, very profitable or very beneficial for us to do that, but it's kind of like we feel like it's paying it forward because we've been there and we've seen that there are not in Australia. We don't have many places where your IP still can stay with you. You can do your innovation, but you are not fully in the stage that you need to use clean room or work on the quality management systems necessarily.
Yeah, fantastic mindset. Thank you for the industry on behalf of the industry.
Yes.
And so building the team. So you mentioned when you were in the US, you had the opportunity to build an amazing team, state-of-the-art team. How is it? Because I imagine you're a startup, you initially not well known and you might have a good pitch on the technology, but how do you attract those top talents to actually take a stake in your company and advise you? Is that you had a very good pitch from the beginning, or as you say, just network? Tell me, what's the secret?
Honestly, I think the most important thing is become part of a community. It can be an incubator, it can be an accelerator, it can be your supervisor's lab in the university, and then that supervisor has the network. For us, it was the incubator. So the opportunity that was provided for us to be in QB3 incubator and UCSF Frozen Man incubators and in the hospital environment, because UCSF is a lot of years is ranked first in medicine in the world. So
Yeah.
being just physically there and being part of the community honestly gave us lots of credibility. So when we were asking people to meet, to talk, they were like, oh, these guys have been filtered once. And also we went there basically prepared somehow because we spent 6 months in MedLab program, just working on pitch deck, pitching, a business model. A lot of things changed, but change is part of a startup. Like your technology might change, your business model, the application, what you want to use this technology for. So it's in deep tech that those are norms, and people who have done it, they understand it easily. They don't question you why you were using this platform for that application or why you have a new patent, because that's quite a norm. What matters is that you understand that there is a need, and then you have a technology, you have the team to build that, and then you become part of communities that are already trusted with bigger communities. So, for example, we got the first introductions to our now chairman of the board, Fred Finger, through someone who was the ex-investor in one of his companies. And she was Karen Borenzi. She was the mentor at QB3, executive mentor at QB3. And she didn't initially introduce me to him. She was like talking to and evaluating myself, my team, the technology for, I would say, 6 months before she made the introduction. Because The connections and network is not something that you can easily give away. You want to make sure that your connections and their time will be used on something that basically the founders care, it has the potential. So they did due diligence during the first 6 months that we were there, and then they started providing some introductions. And then that was us after that, how we built the relationship and how we build the trust. For example, the first time Fred, he was in California for a conference, and then his Saturday was free, and he spent morning to afternoon in the lab, in the office with us before he puts his name there on us.
So hands-on due diligence.
And hands-on due diligence, but to your question, usually warm introductions, being part of incubators can help, and asking people to introduce you to the next person.
Right. Perfect. Don't be afraid of networking is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you cannot be in the startups.
And so about prototyping, so did you do all the prototyping when you were in the US there? Or did you have a minimum viable product? And also, can you take me through a little bit the stage gate that you had to push the technology forward and the pivot?
So that's a great question. It's for hardware medical devices. It can be different when it comes to software. It can be different when it comes to devices that don't need regulatory approval or don't need exactly like to be built in a special manufacturing environment. But for hardware medical devices, and it's not just the general rule is that you innovate, you have the minimum viable product that works in the lab, and then you have one stage that is called manufacturing process development. So outside of the lab, let's say you have made this, let's say something simple. Let's say you have made anything that is used as a medical device. It can be a sensor for blood testing, right? You make it in the lab, it's working in the lab, but then before you commercialize it, you have an step that is usually underestimated, and that's the manufacturing process development. You have to get access or outsource this step, and this step is where you have your product produced in actual manufacturing environment with the actual machines that you're going to use for making your final finished good. So
how early does it come or how late does it come?
Just purely in terms of building the product, you have done the research and development, you have something that works in the lab, and now you need to make sure that it works. For example, you've been making your material on hot plate. Now you need to make sure that you can also do it in big mixers in manufacturing facility or big molds or whatever that you have been in lower scale in the lab. You need to make sure that now you can
Scale.
Yes. So it's not about scaling up for selling the product. It's scaling up for making the product. And that doesn't need to be in big manufacturing facilities. That's another thing that we lack a lot in Australia versus in the US. There are places where, let's say, the company is building another product, but they are open for you to use the facility to do your manufacturing process development. And we did that. We did that with the company in Bay Area. They opened the door to us. We did the manufacturing process development there. They didn't have anything to do with medical devices. They didn't have clean rooms, but they had the machines that we were thinking we need for manufacturing process. So we took our basically raw materials there and we built the product in their very dirty facility. And then we took note which machines, which temperature, what works for us. And then when we had the capital, we bought our own equipment with the confidence that we knew that this exact equipment will work for us.
Right. How many attempts did it take? Like how many machines did you have to try?
Months and months. And so we were sending, for some of them were available there so we could test ourselves. Some of them we sent samples to Germany, to France, to people who had that machinery, and we had like short contract, just one go to test that material inside their machine for us. And most of the times it was like, it's not working.
Okay. So month.
So for us, it was like, I have this heating process, mixing process. We divided the process into small beats. And then for each beat, we made sure that we know which exact machine does the job for us.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you said that this is a gap in Australia. So if you had not been in the US at that point and you had to do this manufacturing step in Australia, do you think it would have been impossible and you would have to go overseas or?
It wouldn't be impossible, but it would be definitely slower. We don't know of many places where startups can go and say, look, I don't have any sales. I don't want to make 1,000 units. I just want to make 5 units and I don't have the big machines. Can I use your big machines? And I tell you why, because we don't have many companies that have been acquired here and they still keep the assets. While in the US, there are a lot of companies that are acquired, but they have some of the equipment and assets. So they keep it and they just continue as owner, persuading their passion for helping the startups.
Right.
Yeah, so it would be slower.
It would be slower. And the incubator, they can't provide agreement with other companies or that doesn't happen.
They have started 5 years ago. There wasn't many incubators that have, let's say, clean rooms or PC2 facilities or PC1 facilities inside their incubators. Cicada had some. Nowadays they have more. I know UNSW Founder Group has some labs facilities, etc. But it's more than facilities that incubators can provide.
Yeah, it's more. Okay. The machine are really heavy machine.
Exactly. In the US, it's usually citing that an industry partner is doing. For example, the one that we did our final manufacturing process in, they were producing something for dental application. That's just the raw material. But the owner was an entrepreneur himself and he had the passion. And we were like, oh, you have these machines. Can we use it can we come in just 5 times, 10 times, see if it works for us? We have the plan then. We'll have different proposals. Either you use a contract manufacturer when it comes to scale up manufacturing. When you have done your process manufacturing development, you have a few ways to go. You can use a contract manufacturer, but you have the knowledge, what exact machines you need, how much it's going to cost. So you will not be blinded. Or you can develop your own state-of-art manufacturing, which you should have good reasons, enough capital for doing that. Or basically with the same partner, you can improve their facility and partner with them to use their facility in provide the requirements, good manufacturing for them, and basically partner with the same place that you did your process development.
And so about funding, the first thing, just to get a little bit of context, how much do you need really roughly to take the initial IP to a prototype that is viable? That first chunk. And then the second chunk, what would you need to actually do this manufacture? You build your facilities. What scale are we looking at?
So in the startups, it's hard to look at the whole picture when it comes to funds and capitals. You need to do it gradually. So for us, we started with 50K incubator money. They took equity and they gave us 50K. So I could quit my full-time job, I was paid much more than that, but I at least could pay the bills using that money. So we used the first money mostly as my salary, our salary, and also just buying very basic things. It's really depends on your technology. Some technologies you have to experience yourself. You have to buy a bit of DNA, RNA products, and it costs like 10K for a few, I don't know, nanograms, milligrams. Some technologies are not like that. So it's really hard to put a number on it, but I would say the incubator money is the most available, feasible money to start with. And how you spend that money depends on the priorities of the company that you are building.
So thinking smart, I've heard someone tell me, how do you make 100K worth $1 million? What's your take on that? How can you make those 50K go as far as they can?
Yeah, I can talk on that. I'm very cost conscious person when it comes to business. So you really need to prioritize and you need to think about the next fund before this one finishes and you ran out of the money. So you need to put part of that money, invest that money to get the next money. So you think about what I need to hit to be able to get the next money and you focus on that.
And so what was it for you when you have the prototype and you finish those first incubator money? What was your next gate, your next stage to get the next funding?
When you have access to the IP, or you are thinking about licensing that IP, and you get the incubator money, one thing that in the grants or early investors, angel investors wants to see is that you have your pitch deck, you understand your business model. So I would spend the first money on developing the pitch deck, not just getting fancy designers to design it for me. I mean, the concept, what I'm putting there, and I understand every single word that I'm using in my pitch deck and what's behind each slide. It doesn't need to be fancy or beautiful at all. And also getting some early results, technical results, because the actual real investors, early days, you don't have sales when it comes to deep tech technologies. So what is your traction? Part of that is the results that you've taken in the lab. So early results, good business model. So if you have to spend your own time to learn, that would be your salary. If you need to pay a contractor from time to time, that can be budget for contractors. I look at what would bring me the next money and I would focus on that. Because honestly, without capital, even if you have the best technology, best team.
The investor guide you on what they wanted to see next for you to get the next money? Did it guide you a little bit on this or you had to guess?
Most of the times, yes. So when you hear no from them, which is the case 100% of the times, every days, you ask them, okay, I understand what would be the things that you would make you more interested and you want to see. Let's say if I talk to you in 6 months or 1 year or 18 months or next round, and they tell you, they say clinical results or animal results or engagement of an experienced person in the team. Investors don't tell you the real reason why they are not investing most of the times. That's a very uncomfortable question for them, asking why you didn't invest. They don't tell you, or they have to make something up usually if you ask that question. But if you tell them, what would you like to see in 6 months or 1 year or 18 months, they tell you the truth.
Great advice. So don't take it and ask why, but rather what would it take for you to look at it? And so then you receive 2.7 million from the New South Wales Fund and then 1 million grant on the Accelerating Commercialization Grant and the Australian Government Entrepreneurs Program.
Yes.
And so that was, I'm guessing, a very good boost in the technology. How far does it take you?
Absolutely. Yeah, so they were significant money from Medical Devices Fund. And I mean, we have a long journey to go, but we will be nowhere close to where we are without that fund.
Did you pitch for it? Did you apply? You're the CEO of the company, so you're the one doing all the funding application?
So with that one in particular, there are different stages. You have expression of interest, you have then full application, then you have the interview, and the whole thing takes something around 6 to 7 months from the time that you put the expression of interest in. But even when it comes to grant monies, it's really important to network beforehand.
Right.
Because you are early and they want to make sure that they invest in the right people. The technology, the business, obviously, they will be highly due diligence and they are important. But more importantly, they want to make sure that they make the KPIs to make the next generation of entrepreneurs. They want to make sure that they invest in the right people. So even when it comes to grant money, it's important to be in their events when they have, usually they have even, they describe the details of how you can apply, etc. Be there, ask questions, make sure they see you. So that's something that we did. And then the application itself, spend time, not just on the application. When it comes to grants for startups, it's not just about the idea. They ask you about the business model, the value propositions, the competitor landscape, how much you're going to sell, what's your growth projection. So all of that actually forms the business model for the company if you do it in a right way. So we did that in a very accurate and right way. So we could get the grant, but also we could use the model in reality in the business. So it was not absolute waste of time, just spend time, make this proposal just to get the grant, but also that was actually the business plan. And with accelerating commercialization, which unfortunately they closed it recently completely, they don't take new application. And also with Medical Devices Fund, which we are lucky that it's still around, most of them, they provide advice as well. So they have a community. You would be surprised of how many sharp people they have in their committee who interview you. They get to know you. And then after you got the grant, you get the chance of asking them questions, going to them from time to time and get their advice. They are founders of really big companies, medical device companies in Australia, or clinicians with Medical Devices Fund. So that's huge. And with accelerating commercialization, they used to put a facilitator on your case. So you worked one-on-one. For us, it was long time, months and months of working with our facilitator before we applied.
Oh, right. Even before you applied.
Before we applied, yeah.
Well, really good tip. That you don't just apply blindly thinking your idea is going to make the cut, but you do all the work beforehand and then apply.
Yes. And that's what they wanted as well. They wanted to make sure that it's pretty much venture groups. They have a partner that do a lot of due diligence, work with the company before the firm puts money in.
A little bit on funding again from venture capital. So women-led business usually get less than 2% of the venture capital in the world. What has been your experience and how did you overcome the odds?
I have experienced the times that I've been underestimated as a woman CEO, as someone with accent, and as a young person. And it's just, you should just accept the reality. This is how we have trained our kids, basically. And that's the fault of all of us. And thinking about the past, I think doesn't help. You just should be so resilient, have the grit. Don't give up. It's not your problem. It's just the systematic issue.
But it's not your problem, but
It's your problem, but it's not your fault.
It's not your fault. So how do you go past? Do you just go to someone else, or you just are more persistent with that same person and try to get them past your, youth, gender, and accent?
Someone else.
Someone else. Okay.
So you don't have the power to change people. Maybe one day you become powerful to change the people, but as a founder, all I cared about was to save my company, to raise money, and to bring people on the board that the first thing that they think about is not kicking the women out of the board or out of the CEO position. So when I was getting comments like that about things that I cannot change, my gender, my accent, I would just move on as quick as possible.
Difficult situation.
Yeah.
And obviously your co-founder is a man. So I was wondering if you ever thought about sometimes commenting by sending him instead. Or if you just were like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll push through because I deserve it, which you do.
It's really important that the men in your team, in your board, should be supportive of you. So we had an investor that tried to go around, talk to our chairman of the board, he has nothing to be discriminated, basically, in terms of systematic discrimination. He's not an immigrant, anything. He's very norm in the society, if you like. And he was like, no way. Yeah, he was like, I'm not going to talk to this person. He had this comment on you, and I'm just going to refer him back to you. And then you know what to do with him.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I like this.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah. I love your take on, the discrimination bits, because it's really hard to handle when you're there, you don't know what to do, right?
yeah, you would cry. Obviously, I did too. But then you realize over time that you move on and you become more and more strong. And it's just about not giving up.
Mm,
It's not about skills. You have to have the skills, obviously. You have to. So it's not if they don't accept me, I go out and improve my skills because that's not the
that's not the
case.
case, yeah.
That's not the case. You just become more and more resilient
Resilient.
and you just move on. You don't give up and you build it, they will come. Build something amazing, they admire you, they come back.
And I want to talk about you a little bit now. What is the biggest stretch that you think has been in this entire 5 years of founding the company, beyond just the technical learnings?
Yes. So I would say the confidence that, so you know how in science world, being humble is very appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to industry, yes, you have to be humble all the time, but also being confident and just speak out if something is not right. If people ask questions about that is confidential or they are wrong questions so basically you become someone that is really confident in taking care of the business, taking care of the team and taking care of herself. So that's been the biggest stretch for me personally, mm, because it's a totally different world when it comes from academia to industry and to startups in particular.
Mm. And then did the people around you were supportive? Obviously, your husband was part of the journey, but perhaps I don't know, your parents or even your colleagues. Did you had anyone who wanted to discourage you or thought that wasn't a good idea and you should just take a corporate job or another academic tenure?
There were many people around me who told me that's not a good idea. Take a corporate job. You have children. It's not the best idea. You would lose the family that you've built over years. I know, and I cannot say all of those came from bad intention. Most of the times, that's really what they think and what they believe and what they've been told. So I didn't take like those advice as someone that, oh, they don't want the good thing happen to me. No, it's just what they believe. But how that influenced my life, it's my decision. So I have had people commenting negatively, but I also have had supporters like my co-founder with my husband, our chairman of the board. They are all about women empowerment. And also, I'd like to mention the women who empowered me. Two of them are our investors as well. So they wrote the first check, and that was, words are strong, but when you write check to someone, that just shows a lot of confidence. And
yeah,
I had Topaz Conway, Karen Boise. They both are like big, powerful. They are very well known in their field, and their checks were, and their advice as well, were so much in early days, so much empowerment that came my way. And also, Anne O'Neill in New South Wales Health Government is a big fan of women in entrepreneurship. So, and she is active in many programs. It's easy to find her in events in Sydney. So she was one of my first motivator, and she has been my inspiration and role model from day one. So I would say men can be really supportive, but also women supporting other women are very important.
Very important, definitely. And we're showcasing that today on this podcast. And then the last question, you said you had a family. How does work-life balance look for you and your co-founder, given us the same family? And do you have any advice for keeping enough energy in the tank?
Yes, absolutely. So you have to have the support from family. And if not, that makes it really difficult. So for me, my husband, my co-founder, has been the one that basically he is very open. He's open to put me as the first person. For example, right now that I'm talking to you, as you can imagine, he is the person behind the IP. He does a lot of our finance work. So he has a lot of responsibilities in the company. But he was like, I'm going to take 1.5 hours off. I take care of the baby. You go and talk on this podcast without thinking about baby, house, anything. So that's just a small example, but he's been like that all the time. I'm lucky in that term. So that has made it easy for me to have the life work balance in place. So I have to concept to that. And yeah, but apart from that, it's about not being perfectionist.
Okay.
One problem with us is that as girls and as women is that we want to do everything perfect, and perfect takes time. So then we don't have time to do everything. So they say 80% of 100% of the things is much better than 100% of
Nothing.
80% of the tasks that you have. So one thing I think that the startup journey has changed me a lot is that I was a 100% perfectionist. I was like, everything needs to be perfect. But nowadays I'm like more about finishing the jobs, and everything needs to be done, even if it's 80%. So one thing that can really help with the life-work balance is that not everything needs to be perfect, even motherhood. So you don't need to be 100% according to society's definition, the mom that society expects. I give you example. So when I went to the US, they didn't give my husband and my less than 2 years old son visa. So I was in the US for 4 months before they can join me. And I was still breastfeeding when I left. So
difficult.
So that difficult, but traditionally, even some like elder women in my family, they were criticizing me for doing that. They were like, you have left your baby who is not even 2 years old and you're doing this. But I was like, he is in a safe place. We know he doesn't have medical conditions. I know that daddy and people I have put around my baby can take care of him. So I know the best as a mom. But according to society, maybe I was a worse mom at the time. So I would say learn not to be perfect, even when it comes to motherhood. Being good enough is enough.
And let go of other people's expectation.
Absolutely, because that doesn't add up with being an entrepreneur, being a CEO. So if we want to have the work-life balance and also make progress in work-wise, you just need to forget about what's norm and you put your best judgment in place, make the best decision for your family. And it can be just good enough, as I mentioned. It doesn't need to be perfect.
Yeah, I like that. I'm also a recovering perfectionist.
There is actually one song. So I always listen to Masterpiece, Perfectly Imperfect.
Perfectly Imperfect, Masterpiece. I'll note it down.
Yeah, from Jessie J. And also one other song that I always listen in my car is good. So it's just a motivational song that I always think about. I still have fire inside me. So even when I think my energy is like at the lowest possible, I listen to the song and I'm like, I still have the fire inside me, even if I don't have the energy. And I can make the most important changes with that little bit of energy if I focus on that.
Well, I hope we can welcome so many more people into the club of the recovering perfectionist.
Yes. I'm in it with you.
And I also had to add something because I think it's really important what you said. You say, yeah, I'm very lucky. My husband has been supportive. But I want to say it's not luck, it's by design. You picked a husband, so he just didn't come up from the sky. And this is something I like to tell to all the young girls because I hear it again and again. And is women who are successful usually have supportive partner. And so if you don't pick the right partner, you're going to have difficulty after because you're going to fight it all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really a key piece of that. And I've heard it again and again and again. So I want to re-emphasize that message. And I'm sure it's also valid for men. You have to pick the right partner for the life you want. So
it's a choice.
It's a choice.
Exactly. Yes.
And that was Dr. Mariam Parviz, co-founder and CEO of SDIP Innovations, living proof that you can have it all. That is, if you know what having it all means to you. And let go of whatever other people may tell you, no matter how much they love you. And against the odds, as Mariam said, she was surprised to see low participation of women in engineering here in Australia, as it was the majority of students there in Iran where she trained. But despite having little role model in the sector, Mariam was inspired by seeing how technology could improve people's life and Armed with great expertise and a partner in business and in life who shared the same passion, she got to found SDIP Innovations. And Mariam makes it sound like if starting a company is the obvious thing to do. Let's get the IP, let's pivot the platform for this tech to thrive and get it to market. But she also warns us about the challenges that are often overlooked. And it's not just about the tech in the lab and the manufacturing process, which may seem less exciting to enthusiast innovators, is just as important. And in Australia, it is hard to get access to facilities to try manufacturing machines when you don't even have a clue of what you actually need at that stage. Whereas in the US, she tells us how there are more companies which have been acquired and keep their facilities to lend these to entrepreneurs. Another recurring theme is get yourself involved in a community. This was a game changer for Mariam, and we've heard how even just enrolling to the medical device commercialization course led to some more support by New South Wales Medical Research Department leader Anne O'Neill herself, pointing Mariam in the right direction to apply and get into the world-class incubator in San Francisco. And there again, in a community of like-minded people who have done it all before and multiple times, more magic happens. As she said, once you get past that level, you're starting having been filtered by trusted people enough times that you become trustworthy yourself and can get access to more support. It's kind of a snowball effect. And last but not least, I want to re-emphasize Mariam's message for all the time where you were overlooked, even for unfair reasons like your accent, your gender, your youth, or else. She said, don't waste your time there. You don't have the power to change people, at least not at that stage. Find someone else to pitch. And it doesn't mean that you need to jump into a 5-year self-improvement program. Sometimes it's just about people's bias, and it's hard to fight that. Unfair, but hard to fight. And surround yourself by allies who will stand for you as you stand your ground. So, think about it. Who are the people you've been trying to get to without success? And who could you reach out instead? If you have follow-up questions, love to hear it. Guests that you are dying to hear from, happy to go for it. Leave me a message. Hey, thanks for listening. If you like the show, share it. Tune in for monthly episodes. You can follow Multiple Hats, visit my website, that's angeliquegreco.com.au, or follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Just search for Angelique Greco. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to tell me about your story, leave me a message.